Mike, why don't you start us on how you did with your action items?
Well, I did okay. I don't think that I did something that sucks every day. Although you could say my hard thing has been writing. I've written probably 65,000 words in the last 3 weeks.
Wow.
Many of them are for the Pro Vault, which I squeezed out just in time because I mentioned it on the last episode and then forgot about it till I was reviewing. I created a landing page with a 20-minute visual tour of what that all looks like, but I've been creating how-tos that go along with that. And then I've also had a couple longer articles that I've had to write. And yeah, so that's a lot of words. And now that I got past all the deadlines and the writing is done for the Pro Vault, stuff like that, I'm kind of taking a step back and asking myself, how did I manage to do that?
Yes.
But that's not what I intended to do. So I don't think I can mark that one as complete. That one's probably got a red X, to be honest. I'm trying to justify it live, I guess. But if I'm being real, I don't think I did it.
That's a lot of words in 3 weeks. That is a lot of words in 3 weeks.
It is. Well, I don't know. I guess I'll mark it as complete then if you're gonna
Yes.
talk me
Yes.
into it. The other one I did have more success with the content audit. And the way I did this was initially I was thinking I'm going to go through and think about what who I'm following and what are the sources of the information that I am consuming, because I try to be intentional about that stuff. I recognize that everything that I create is downstream from something that I consume. And the intention was to go through the people that I I follow, or the subscriptions in YouTube and stuff like that. What I ended up coming to was there are certain types of things that I just don't want on my phone, which is where I would tend to consume this stuff. So I deleted X, I deleted Instagram, and I want to engage with those things only on my computer. We're talking a little bit in the pro show about uh, my preference for having devices for specific contexts. And I'm recognizing that by default, the social media stuff has kind of crept back onto my mobile device. And I want to draw a hard line and say, no, that is not even possible there, regardless of whether I'm looking at my PKM list in Twitter or whatever. It's just not the right place for that. And there are tools that I can use when I do this on the Mac. There's all sorts of different Chrome extensions and things where I can block the For You tab, because that's the thing I kind of don't want to fall into anyways. I just want to see the stuff I've decided I want to see. I don't want to see what the algorithm thinks I should be interested in. I'm going to say that has been the result of my content audit, but it was a little bit different than I initially thought going into it. I know you had the same action item, so how did you do with yours?
Yeah. So I did pretty well with the content audit. And what I can tell you is I don't like some of the content that I consume regularly. And I think it's just because it's low quality, right? Like there's high quality content, there's low quality content. The books we read, whether I like the book or not, is they're high quality, right? Like people have thought critically about those, it's been reviewed, all of those things. So I consider that high quality. You know, certain articles that I'll read or other works that I'll read online, those are high quality. I'm good with those. But I spend a lot of time, just in the in between moments, looking at like news headlines or looking at slick deals or looking at some other, like silly thing that hacker news or something like that. And while every once in a while it goes back to oh my goodness, what is the hold on, I gotta find it because it goes back to scarcity brain, right? And it goes to that scarcity loop where I get enough positive hits on those that it keeps me doing it. But at the same time, most of the time it's junk, and most of the time it's just wasted time. So my content audit says get rid of that. And I know you have a strategy where you'll like always have a book in your hand, or you'll always have something there. That way you have
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'm sure you don't 100% of the time go to that book, right? But at the same time, that is where I tied into the rearrange your physical environment. And it's like, okay, how do I make sure I have a thing that when my brain goes, I want something to do right now, it's a high quality thing. It's not a low quality thing. Where what I want to think about more is there an RSS type reader? Is there a, pocket, save for later kind of a thing where I've got some canned high quality material that I've stocked away, and then I can go and I can grab that high quality material, as opposed to um as I can, instead of going to the normal three websites that I always go to that are are annoying and low quality. I did not develop, I guess that is a content strategy, but I didn't sit down and think like of a very rigorous content strategy. I didn't make it that far in that one. So that was number one. So I would say that's like, I don't know if we're going to go, red X, green check mark. This was more of like yellow light on the thing, right? I was kind of in the middle in that one.
We can incorporate some other colors in here. That's
Yeah,
what do you ever listen to Conduit on Relay?
I do. I do. Yes.
Yeah, so they have basically just red, yellow, and green emojis, I think, and people just pick a whatever emoji when they're describing their own
Yeah.
connections, they call them. So
Yeah, so I'm
yeah.
definitely in the yellow. I'm definitely in the yellow on this one. The next one I had was think about something that's anxious or bothering me, like, and then think about it from another perspective, or write about it from another perspective. I'm yellow on this one too because I didn't write about it from another perspective, but I thought about it from another perspective. So I had one of these pop up and kind of went through it, and I thought about it from the perspective of a different individual who has a very different reason for wanting things done in a way that's different than I do. And I'm trying to be very vague here. But at the same time, uh, I understand why they would want it done that way, even though I disagree with it and I don't want it to be done that way. I get it, and it made sense, and it kind of made me go, okay, Cory, just be okay with that. Like, you gotta, lose this one. It's okay to lose this one, and not fight the fight on this one. It's not worth it. The last one, and I got a green check mark on this one. It's look up the MBSR, which is mindfulness based stress reduction. And I had no idea that this is like actually a real legitimate thing developed by medical professionals. It's been around for like, I don't know, 30 years or something like that, 40 years. There's a National Institute of Health article on it. UMass Memorial Health has this whole like program that you can do with it. So mindfulness based stress reduction is a thing. There's supposedly some evidence that it actually can help, with some illnesses, some like chronic illnesses. So pretty cool. That was fun to look up and realize. It seems like a very well resourced and, well researched kind of thing. So that was pretty interesting. So those are my 3 action items. You ready to get in today's book?
Let's do it.
All right, so today's book is called The Ritual Effect: From Habit to Ritual, Harness the Surprising Power of Everyday Actions. And it's by a guy named Michael Norton. And Michael Norton is the Harvard M. Brierley Professor of Business Administration at Harvard. He's written some other books, and his, they put the praise for the shout outs and the call outs on the back of the book. He's got some big names on here. So he's got, Arthur Brooks, who's another professor at Harvard Business School. He's got Charles Duhigg on there, which we've read, Super Communicators, and Mike's done The Power of Habit. And then Angela Duckworth, who wrote Grit. So he's got some big names endorsing the book. Overall, the book is about the idea of rituals, but not the idea, and we're going to get into this, it's not the idea of what we would consider legacy rituals, which I think is the way I went into this book, thinking about like the big, monster legacy rituals that everybody thinks about, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But it's more of the everyday rituals. It's more of the ones that you don't really pay attention to as much, but then you end up realizing that they are rituals. This book is much more a summary of his research and the research that's been done in the ritual space than I anticipated it to be and than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, that was not that was not really what I wanted it to be, but at the same time, I walked into that one. Mike, what'd you think in your first thoughts on the book?
So my first thoughts were kind of, why are we reading this, to be honest? I
Okay.
thought it was going to be more like a habits book. And I'm glad it wasn't. It's interesting to hear that you thought it was going to be more like legacy rituals as opposed to, I guess I would define it as daily rituals,
Mm-hmm.
and how much of our life is these routines that we've established, and the meaning and the benefit that comes from having those things. So I was skeptical at first. The cover has a white bathtub with a red apple on it, which still makes absolutely no sense to me.
It's Agatha Christie.
Okay.
Remember, she would eat the apple in the bathtub, and that was one of the rituals he describes in the very beginning
Okay.
of the book. Is that's one of hers, right?
I
So
do remember some of the rituals that he shared. There was a writer who would strip down naked, and then his butler basically wouldn't give him his clothes back until he had
cor-
achieved his writing goal for the day.
yes,
Um, that's definitely not like the majority of the the material in this book. But if you are interested in that sort of thing, by the way, there's a really good book called Daily Rituals, I think, by Mason Curry,
okay,
and it's just a whole bunch of the morning, evening, crazy creative routines by people who do really impressive stuff. Not just like artists and writers, but scientists, mathematicians, all sorts of people. Um, so yeah, it was. I didn't make that connection with the beginning. I don't know why. Maybe there were only a handful of those, but apparently that one didn't land.
okay,
Um, I do think once I got into the first part of the book, though, I saw that I was becoming more and more optimistic. Um,
okay,
we'll talk through the different parts here, but it wasn't exactly what I thought, and I think that's a good thing.
okay. All right, so that's not, Mike. I would say that's not like a glowing you know review going into it, but that's okay. We're gonna talk about it. I I don't know what I thought about this book either when I picked it. I was like, I'm not sure. It seems like an interesting one to read. I like the idea of ritual. I hadn't even like the tagline where it says from habit to ritual. I hadn't even like processed that in my brain. So I just more thought of like, oh, it'd be interesting to think about like rituals and like what are the rituals that I engage in often, and why do I engage in those? But I really had very little, you know, motivation other than that. I thought it looked pretty good. The book breaks down into four parts. You've got what rituals do. Part two, rituals for ourselves. Part three, rituals in relationships. Part four, rituals at work and in the world. And then within those, there's about 3 chapters in each section. There's a total of 13 chapters. There's a preface and an epilogue. And it breaks down in that way. I will tell you that some of these parts I found more interesting than others. Not that I didn't understand what he was doing, but it felt very much like this is where we've done the work, so therefore this is going to be this part of the book, not this is the story I want to tell and the thread I'm trying to weave here. So therefore it made sense in that way, which I think that detracted from the book for me, right? Like I felt like at times we would just shift into a different thing. And it's like, well, why did we shift into this? Oh, it's because you want to talk about this research study that you or one of your colleagues did, or a couple of these research studies that you or one of your colleagues did. From a reading standpoint, I thought this book was really easy to read. It was really fast. I didn't think, it was a slog in terms of the reading style. There were times where I was just more or less interested in it. So that's my overview. Anything else you want to do the overview before we get rolling into the actual content?
Nah, I think that's pretty good. Let's get into
Okay.
the book.
All right, so we're getting into the book now. So the preface is very short, so I don't think it's worth us taking the individual time. Mike, I actually think I want to do this book in parts. I think it's going to make more sense instead of doing it in 13 chapters to do it in parts if you're okay with that. So,
Yeah, let's do it.
so the part one is called "What Rituals Do." It's got 3 chapters in it. It's got three full chapters in the preface. So it's got the preface, what are rituals, you get out of it what you put in, and then the ritual effect. And that it's kind of setting the stage for, hey, we're going to talk about rituals. In this section, it's this idea of legacy rituals, which you can essentially think of legacy rituals as anything that's connected to like a bigger institution. That's the way I would think about them, right? So a religion would have rituals, a holiday would have rituals. Like there are these bigger, ones that kind of get passed down to you. You have less agency in the fact that you're going to do them, but everybody does them. Like we all do this thing around this time of the year, right? So that would be a legacy ritual. Then he's going to counteract that with this idea of these everyday rituals, these things that really we're doing. They're not habits, but they're more meaningful than that. And we do them, and we sometimes often don't even realize we're doing them, that we have these rituals that we don't even realize we're doing. And he gives some examples of these throughout the, what are rituals, and he delineates them from habits, and we can talk about whether we like the way he did that or not. He talks about this idea of you get out what you put in, where essentially we feel more strongly about the rituals that we create as opposed to the ones that were given to us or the ones that were thrust upon us. And then he goes into kind of the ritual effect chapter is more of like, okay, why do rituals even impact us? Like, what is the effect of them on us, and why do we latch onto them, and why do we care about them? So that's essentially the overall gist of part one. Mike, I want to take you to, what did you think about his discussion between habits and rituals? Like, what were your thoughts there when he separates these two things out?
Yeah, this was one of the big aha moments for me, I think, with this book, was the difference between habits and rituals. And I never really thought about it this way before, but I like the way that he broke these apart. So habits are the what, that's something that we do, and those are things that generally are used to automate, and they help us get things done. And I just got done with the whole Life HQ. I have a section in there on habit tracking. That was actually my most recent YouTube video as we record this. Hopefully I'll get another one out before this goes live. But I was walking through in that video how I built a habit tracker in Obsidian. And so I've long had morning routines, I've long had evening routines, and I've tried to automate certain things in those morning and evening routines. And then the habit tracker that I've been using is kind of additional things on top of that really just aren't creased yet. So I'm not tracking everything, but I'm really just trying to get to the point where these things are automated like he describes in this particular book. But then rituals, he defines as the how, the specific way that we do something. And if habits automate us, then rituals animate us. They enhance and enchant our lives. And when I heard that word enchant, I'm like, oh, that's kind of clever. But the more I think about it, I think that that's actually pretty accurate. I think that's a good descriptor for what these rituals do. And we were kind of talking earlier about how there are certain people who have these crazy rituals, but they don't always need to look like that. And kind of the point he makes is that we've all got these little things that we do. And if we think about them, I think they can mean a lot to us. One of the rituals that I've established in my family, just got back. We're recording this on a Monday. Monday mornings are the day that I take one of my kids to the coffee shop and we get coffee and play games. And I'm realizing that is a ritual that I started doing because I wanted to build a platform to speak into their lives as they got older. But it kind of hit me as I was reading this book that it's cool that my kids really look forward to that day with dad. Like, it has become a ritual for them in a way that I didn't think it was going to become a ritual. Like, I was just viewing it from my perspective initially. And then that got me thinking about all of the different little things that I could do in my day that could add more meaning. And they don't have to be crazy. I guess another like ritual that I came up with, which is meaningful to me, is that when I do publish a YouTube video, as a way of celebrating, there's a boba tea place in Appleton, and I'll go get a boba tea. And that's the only time that I go out of my way to get the boba tea. I love boba tea. I would drink it every day if I had the means. Probably not healthy for me, but I could occasionally just go get a boba tea, but I've defined that as a part of the ritual and the celebration for publishing a YouTube video. So as I'm working on the YouTube video now, I look forward to the boba tea.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It sounds ridiculous, like you're a grown adult. You can go buy a boba tea if you want, but that's like how I've defined it, and I don't think about it outside of that, and it creates this anticipation and something that I look forward to. So again, like the whole idea of rituals, if you were to ask me as I'm starting part one, what is a ritual? I probably would have defined it as the legacy type rituals that you were mentioning at the beginning. But this kind of took me in a different path, and it really got me thinking about things in a different way. And I'm glad that it went that direction, to be honest.
Yeah. My biggest, I guess, example that was running through my brain while I was doing this is, I mean, when I write things, or when I need to write critically, like I have a ritual that I do, right? I mean, and it involves a coffee shop. It involves the process to get there, setting up, clearing my brain. Like there is this process, and it is amazing to me that how much more effective I am at writing when that ritual happens before I try to sit down and write. Like before I try to sit down and actually put words on paper. And it's only for a specific type of writing. Like I can write like other things that are less meaningful, but it's like if it's a important piece of work that I need to write, and I backed into that. Like it wasn't like I designed that ritual and said, "Oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this," and then I follow that checklist every time I do it. It was more a matter of these are the things I find myself consistently doing, and when I do those, I have a good writing day. And when I don't do those, I don't have a good writing day. And it was this, you brought it up, but it's this idea of like this delight or wonder or peace. And it made me think about like rituals tying into focus and rituals tying into these other aspects of our life in a ways that we wouldn't necessarily think that they do that. So I really liked, whereas habits aren't like that. Like I don't think, oh, well, what do I do? Oh, before I leave the house every day, I make sure I lock the door, or I check the burner, or whatever it is. That doesn't bring me joy and delight. That's just a habit that I do because I want to make sure the burner's off, you know? But there are these other things that like really tie into this joy and delight and this sense of focus. I thought chapter 2 was pretty, straightforward. Okay, if you develop it yourself, you tend to like it more. And the big example here was the IKEA effect. Like you like the furniture more because you built it. I think that's very true. Like the dinner tastes better because you cooked it. Like all of those things. I think that was a pretty easy one. So I'm gonna gloss over chapter 2, and feel free to bring us back if you want to hit anything hard on chapter 2. Chapter 3 I thought was interesting because it ties into some of these more psychological ideas. I guess that you would link then into rituals. So operant conditioning, action insight, casual opacity, right? Like so operant conditioning, right? It's basically that like good action outcomes lead to more of the same. So when we do a thing and we get a good outcome out of it, we then will repeat that thing, and we'll repeat that thing, and we'll repeat that thing, where we won't do that with ideas that or actions that produce a bad outcome. We'll figure out a way to adapt those. And I think that's a really interesting concept. It's been around for a very, very long time, but I think it's a really interesting concept. Action insight, that any action can be identified by mechanical parts, the literal movements, and then the high-level aspirations that inform it. And his point is rituals get us more into those high-level aspirations that inform it. And I think this is where maybe Mike, you differ a little bit, where, it said about how actions and rituals, I think you think very critically about those high level aspirations, just, knowing you, right? To where like maybe some of more of your, what you call habits are actual rituals because you've thought about the high level aspiration behind that habit. Whereas he's probably writing for a more, general audience where it's like, oh, the habit is just a habit. And then they're doing these high level aspirations on the more ritualistic things. I'll talk about the last one, then I'll open it back up to you. But the casual opacity, when something is hard to explain or predict, we believe it's special. So it's like, oh, I didn't know why that happened the way it did. Oh, it must be magic. It must be, it's like, and it's like, no, there's probably a good reason behind that. That it's opaque to us right now, and we can't really see that. And the fact that rituals are embedded in all of these things, right? When we do a ritual that produces good outcomes, we tend to repeat that ritual. Sporting events and athletes would be would be that one. Oh, I turn on to tie my left shoe first, we win. It's like, no, it really has nothing to do with your left shoe. But okay, now you've developed this ritual around that. I like breaking these ideas down. What are the parts of the thing that we're doing? What are the movements of everything? And then what are the aspirations behind it? And then we try to put these rituals behind these things we can't explain. So I like how he, like, chapter 3 I thought was good to kind of launch us into the rest of the book.
Yeah, I agree. One of the rituals that he describes in chapter 3 was really interesting to me because I'm a tennis player. That's the Rafael Nadal. He's got this weird ritual whenever he serves, and I never thought about that. I realized that I had my own ritual, and I think I was aware of it even when I played college tennis. I was D3. I was not really all that good, but it was a fun experience, and I got to play competitive tennis for a while. And I realized that I would always do certain things, and I'm trying to think back. What was my ritual? Is it still burned in my brain? I think I would like twirl my racket twice, bounce it 3 times with the racket, and then as I'm like getting into the rhythm of my serve, I would bounce it with my hand 4 times, and then I would go into my serving motion. But
Wow.
Rafael Nadal's is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And I am kind of curious if he is cognizant of every individual piece of that, because I think it is something that you just do. You don't really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this rhythm that you end up falling into. And with tennis specifically, it's very much a game of rhythm. In fact, you have so long to serve, and some people will pull a jerk move, in my opinion, but as the server is about ready to hit, they'll step off of the baseline and like go wipe their hands on their towel or something just to get them out of their rhythm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can only do that, so many times. Like I said, I was never very good. So a D3, you don't have a line judge there or a referee that you could go talk to and be like, hey, this guy's being a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they've called enough shots out that are actually in, you can go request somebody and maybe they'll come and help you. But otherwise, you just got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
But I do think that as I was thinking through my ritual, I realized that I can picture it in my head still as I was playing, but when I was playing, I never thought about it. It was just something that I did.
Hmm.
And Rafael Nadal is one of my favorite players. I don't think I always would have said that, but he's been very successful. And I think that it's true that the rituals are a large part of that for a sport like tennis. It's so mental, and anything that you can do to calm yourself is going to allow you to play at a higher level than you would have otherwise. Like the physical difference between the very best tennis player in the world and the 100th rated player in the world is very, very small. It's just how did they handle the big moments and can they make the big shots when they need to? In practice, everybody can.
Yeah, I would think golf is the same way, right? Like, I bet you golfers, you could probably write like a whole chapter of this book on just golfers' rituals and what they go through to get ready for, for their round. Okay, so let's move into part 2, if you're good with that. Part 2 is rituals for ourselves. So it's going to take this inward focus on these rituals for ourselves. There's 4 chapters in part 2. 3. There's 4 chapters in part 2. So how to perform, how to savor, how to stay on track, and how to become. And Mike, I'll open to you first on this one, right? Before I go through anything. Did any of these chapters stand out to you more than others?
Yes, I really liked the how to savor chapter.
Nice.
Savoring is a topic that is interesting to me, kind of seeded by my friend Chris Bailey. He brought this up as a topic in the mastermind group one time, just the concept of savoring. And I never had really thought about it before. And then he really got me thinking about it. But it definitely connects to ritual. And so the section, ritual for ourselves, a lot of the rituals that we have, I think having the intention of savoring what that really means is you're extracting more value, enjoyment. So boil it down, joy, I guess, fun out of life's day to day. And I recognized that there were definitely parts of my routine that were designed to savor. And I never really thought about it that way, but it made sense. Like they talked about ritual and serving drinks. I don't drink alcohol, so for me, it was coffee. But for a long time, I've been making pour over coffee at home. I have just about every pour over mechanism that has ever been made. I've got the V60, I've got the Kalita Wave, I've got the Chemex, I've got this crazy, they call it a Phoenix 70. So it's like a V60, but it doesn't have walls and it's at a higher angle. I've got a blue bottle dripper, like you name it, I've probably got it. And I've been making this pour over coffee for a long time with a gooseneck kettle, even though it takes several minutes to grind the coffee and do the pour over method. It was worth it to me because of the ritual that was a part of it. And I could have told you this if somebody asked me about it, like, well, why do you continue to do it? Is there something about the process? I'm going through and I'm making this fussy coffee, and that makes it taste better when I'm done. Like the whole thing just kind of calms me and centers me, and I'm not thinking about what else I have to do at that moment. If I'm thinking about responding to an email or something, I'm not going to make the pour at the right time. And I just loved all the mechanics of it. It really wasn't all that complicated once you knew this is the ratio that you use for the beans and this is what the water should be. There's like 3 or 4 things you have to pay attention to. And then it's just paying attention. And if you pay attention, you can make a great cup of pour over coffee. And I loved that. Now, since then, I've got this automated pour over machine. It's a Chemex automatic. I call it the coffee robot. So we grind the coffee, we put it in the Chemex, put it in the machine, turn the button on, and you can walk away and come back and it's made your pour over coffee for you. And I realized I was reading this that I've lost something. I'm not sure I want to go back to spending another 15 minutes a day making fussy coffee, especially since now I drink it, my wife drinks it, and my son drinks it. That would probably be a little too much. But that was kind of the beginning of this ritual for me. They also mentioned in the How to Savor chapter about fika, and there was a tea place near my co-working space that I would go to frequently called Fika. It's shut down now, unfortunately, but I was familiar with the term fika from that tea shop. And the word fika is a break for coffee, tea, and sweets. It's a Scandinavian word, and it's a whole thing. Like, it's an event. So you're not just gonna go grab a coffee quick. You're going, like, this is the main thing in your morning. Everything revolves around the fika, which I think is actually really cool.
So if you all could see the video, like I've been smiling and kind of laughing the whole time because I don't have this. What Mike just described, I understand it from a mechanics and like a how it could impact one's, life in a better way. I just want the coffee now, right? Like I want it to taste good and I want it to come right now. And I don't care if you drip it and I don't care if you steep it and I don't care if you whatever, he's got all these different methods and all these different tools. And what I want is I want Mike to make me coffee. So I want to send Mike a message and be like, Mike, make me one of your fancy free fruit coffees, right? And then I get delicious coffee and I didn't have to do any work. So we could not be more different on that. Now, the second thing you said, though, which I would agree with you, I didn't grow up in like a culture or an environment where, like the English have their afternoon tea, like the British have their afternoon tea, or is it fika? I can't remember. I didn't remember this term.
Fika.
Yeah, like I didn't grow up in that but I kind of wish I did. Like I like this idea of, hey, at 11 in the morning, everything shuts down for 20 minutes or a half hour or whatever it is. And we all do this collective ritual. We all do this collective thing together, whether we're doing it like actually physically together or we're all just doing it at the same time. But in the 2 offices beside me, they're doing the exact same thing. Why? It's 11 o'clock. And that's what everybody does at 11 o'clock. Like I want one of these in my life. Like I want this activity in my life. I just don't I just don't have it, and I wasn't ingrained with this idea growing up. But
Well, you don't need to have a cultural fika that you can use to savor, or I guess sort of it's still a ritual, but maybe not connected to the idea of savoring. But a cultural thing would be like the Spanish siesta,
hmm
where this is the time when everything shuts down and you do this thing instead. But he talks about 4 strategies for savoring, which I thought were pretty good. The first one is to try to be present for positive moments and appreciate them. So essentially, you were talking about the mindfulness stuff at the beginning, the MBSR that you were digging into. That's the root of this: is
hmm
recognize what's going on and appreciate things. So be grateful for things. Whole gratitude practice. That's an important part of my journaling routine. I express gratitude in my journal every single day, and that definitely helps you notice things like that. The second one was to communicate and celebrate savoring with others. So making it a group thing. It doesn't have to be a whole big cultural thing, but if you found even one other person who, hey, it's time to go do the thing, then that helps it become more
yeah,
sticky.
yeah,
Express your savoring through nonverbal behaviors like smiling. I mean, I think that would kind of happen naturally. I don't think I want to be thinking as I'm drinking my coffee, okay, time to smile now.
yeah.
Richly remember details about past positive experience. That's the fourth one. Again, just the gratitude practice and remembering, oh, I did that thing and it was actually really nice. Um, I I think it's easy to just be focused on what's coming up or the hard things you have to do. I actually ordered a Stoic coin that Ryan Holiday sells. I think it's
hmm
going to be delivered today, with the phrase something along the lines of "He who suffers ahead of time suffers more than is necessary," or something like that. The main idea is just don't worry about the stuff that you can't do anything about,
Yeah, 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 for
which is where
sure.
my mind tends to go. It's like, oh man, that thing coming up at the end of the week, that's going to be really difficult. I got to talk to this person about this thing. Oh, it's going to be so hard to do that. And I'll think about that all week, and I'll let that affect me all week. So I need a visual reminder like, hey, just chill and don't even worry about it until the time comes. Then you can worry about
Then
it.
you can worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. No, so you called out the same chapter that I did. Like how to savor, I think was my favorite chapter out of part two. The other chapters are good. I liked how to become. This is chapter 7. One of the reasons I liked the how to become chapter is because of the rites of passage idea. Like I really like, and I really think these rites of passage are meaningful, and I think they've been meaningful in my life leading up to now. And I'm trying to think about how do I want to encourage these with my children, and I don't want to do it in like a overly extraordinary way where it's like, okay, now, child, I'm going to take you into the woods, 7 miles away from our house, and you have to figure out a way to get back on your own. Like, I don't want it to be like that. I think that's a little too much. But like, I do like the idea of like, okay, when you're this age, we're gonna go on this trip, or when you're this age, you're gonna get to pick this thing that's really really meaningful and really really important to you. Like I like these ideas of like acknowledging the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter, and in talking about that's okay and that's transition and that's important, and we need to do these things. And I really liked how he brought that in. And then he does it here and he does it later in the book as well. He ties rituals to identity, and he talks about how they're tightly woven together. And I think this is really, really important. Um, he talks about how they're effective in helping us transition from different identities, and that we often go through like the rituals when our identity changes, right? So the easy examples of this would be I was a high school student. Now I'm a college student. Well, what was the ritual? I went through graduation, right? Well, okay. I was a student in college, and now I'm going to go, work my first job. Well, what did I do? I went through graduation, or marriage, or whatever it might be. That there are these rituals that we do, um, that help us make that mental shift, that identity shift. And I really like the idea of how he links those two things together, because I think it's really important. And I think that's no, I wouldn't have been able to say this when we first got the book and we first started reading it, but I think that might have been what the idea of this book thought in my head is like, okay, what are the rituals doing for who I am and who I'm going to become and how I'm going to become those people, and then where I want to be proactive about this. And this is probably one of my action items is what are the rituals that I want to start or really double down on, and how do those impact my identity, and how do I want them to impact my identity? So I think that's where like I got there in chapter 7. I think is like oh, okay, this is why this book was intriguing to me, but I couldn't have said it at the onset of the book.
Sure. Yeah. I like chapter 7 as well. The whole idea of rites of passage, I never really thought about them in terms of the 3 different types of transitional phases that he broke down. So the rites of separation, where we leave our previous identity, rites of margin, where we're in the throes of change, and the rites of incorporation, where we enter fully into our new identity. I thought that was kind of a interesting description. But yeah, the majority of this one that stood out to me was the how to savor. Even though there is some good stuff like how to perform, I feel like that's there's definitely action items there for the right person. Where if you get anxious about anything, like I used to get really anxious whenever I would have to speak publicly, even recording a podcast like this, where I knew that the end product was going to be shared with the world, I would get super nervous.
Yeah.
And I would stumble all over my words and things like that. So having a whole ritual that you go through ahead of time to just kind of calm you when you recognize that I'm in this scenario where I'm doing this hard thing, and I don't want to freak out more than I have to. I think rituals are definitely can be used there. And then there's another part of this, I think, especially with savoring, kind of a minor point that he talks about here, but he mentions that people's social circles shrunk 16% during COVID, and a lot of it was from not being able to participate in these shared rituals. And I never would have been able to put a number on that. Like I knew that had actually happened, but I thought it was interesting that they were able to actually pinpoint that. And I think that's the first step in undoing some of that or recovering from that, is to recognize what damage that actually happened. And I think that adds a little bit more incentive to maybe craft intentionally some of these social rituals back into your day-to-day.
Yeah. Okay. So before we leave part 2, this chapter is called Rituals for Ourselves. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and if you want me to go first, tell me. I'll go first. But like, what is the one that comes to your mind that you're willing to share that is like, oh yes, like that is my ritual. Like that's the one I find myself doing, or just one that you're interested in that you didn't necessarily think about it before. But you focused on you, like, because you talked about the one with your kids, right? Like you talked about the one with your kids, but what about the one for you?
I don't know. So one of the action items I have from this is essentially to think about all of my routines and kind of put those under the microscope. However, I don't think that I've neglected those or not thought about those. I just maybe haven't thought about those as much as I think maybe I need to. I've got very firmly established morning and evening routines. I don't know that there was one here where it really stood out to me like, oh, that's what's happening there, or this is really something that I should add. I guess as I was reading through this, I realized that my routines had shifted more towards the habit side and lost some of the meaning. But
Okay.
I don't think that there was like a hole that needs to be plugged, or that even the what is actually going to change. It's probably all going to stay the same. It's just thinking through like, how do I add a little bit more meaning into some of the things that I'm already doing? I don't know. Why don't you go first, and I'll see if I can come up with something after you go.
Yeah, I mean, mine would be, the ritual that is before I teach a class, right? And you said an interesting word that I hadn't thought about before, but like routine. Like, what's the difference between ritual and routine? I think that would be the meaning aspect of it as well. But like, there's this ritual that I go through before I teach class where I try to remind myself it's not just there's a phrase that you use in education called sage on the stage, right? Where you're just the person standing up there delivering some content, but you're actually trying to partner with people to actually get them to learn. So there's this like little mini ritual that I would do where as I'm prepping for that day's lesson, I'm thinking about like, okay, how do you make this meaningful and relevant to the actual students? That way it's not just delivering them content and pumping knowledge into their head, but it's actually like coming alongside of them and helping them get better. And, it goes back to that like 1% every day rule. It's like if we can get better, if we can get 1% better every day, when you look across the spectrum, you got a significantly, larger amount better. And I can't tell you that I know that there are specific actions in that ritual. If I thought about them, maybe I could figure out what they are. But I can tell you that if I don't do that, like if I miss that ritual, that prep ritual, that thinking ritual, it's a significantly different feel for the class. Like I don't go into the class with the same mindset that I do when I do that ritual. And I don't have to do it before every class because a lot of times the classes shift too fast. So it's not like I can do that in between. If I have back-to-back classes, I can do that in between. But if I haven't done that like before the day's teaching, I can tell like the rest of the day is just kind of, oh, we're just kind of going through the motions. Like we're not really, engaged with what we're doing here. So I think that's the one that I find myself leaning towards. It's like, oh yeah, I actually do have a get ready, get in the zone ritual before I teach classes. That's really meaningful and really, really important, and it impacts the rest of the day. I think that'd be my easiest example.
Well, I actually have one that gets into the next section. So
Okay.
you want me to go there?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So the next section is rituals and relationships.
Yep.
And one of the action items that I have from this book comes from chapter 8, How to Stay in Sync. And the realization here is that date night is a ritual. And so the action item is, how can I make the ritual of date night more meaningful? I don't have a specific thing in mind with this because, again, this ritual exists and we have a process for this. My wife and I actually have a whole family meeting template that we follow. And I've been thinking a little bit about, since I read this, what are kind of like the small flourishes that I can add on top of that. And yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm going to come up with, but that's the one that specifically that I was kind of thinking about. Now, like I said, there is actually the larger question of just, I think, putting all of the rituals under the microscope and asking myself, what of this should I change, if anything? But I think that's kind of a thinking time process for me. It's not something that I even have any notion of what I would do differently right now. I need to spend some time just thinking about that stuff in order for that the insights to come. Kind of along those lines, though, I'll share maybe another example of a ritual that has sort of been dialed in over the years. It continues to change. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I just kind of naturally gravitate towards this stuff. But I was a little bit late on doing my personal retreat this quarter. So I just did it a few weeks ago. And I have a very specific routine now with this where I get a tiny cabin, a getaway house, which I think I've mentioned previously. Okay, so I will get to the tiny cabin usually late afternoon, and then maybe 10, 15 minutes from there, there's a small town that has a wood fire pizza place. And so I will go there for dinner. And that's kind of like a ritual before the ritual. Like I haven't really done any deep, serious thinking yet. It's sort of like the meal before it's time to get to work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll bring a book and I'll read it while I'm there, and I've already changed locations, so I'm starting to think about personal retreat stuff, but I'm really not getting into the specifics of it yet. But I'm going to that place, sitting in the booth, eating the pizza, that kind of primes the pump for, okay, now I'm going to drive back. When I get to the cabin, now it's time to go.
Yep.
It sounds kind of silly, but like that was an additional detail that got added just a few personal retreats ago. But at this point, you go to the getaway house, you go get the pizza, you come back, you do the first part of the personal retreat. The second part, there's a walking trail that ends up at this old Boy Scout camp. So it's a bunch of buildings that they used to use. And When I'm walking that trail, that's when I'm doing a specific part of the personal retreat with the what should I start doing, what should I stop doing, what should I keep doing, and then go home at 11 o'clock for checkout. And yeah, it's dialed in at this point, but there's little pieces of it that I always end up, I'm going to tweak this for next time, or I didn't really like the way that worked, so I'm going to change this one little piece of it. But having done it enough at this point, I really am happy with how that has how that has ended up.
Yeah. It's funny. So we are into the relationship section now. So the how to stay in sync one. One of the silly ones that we would do is when we get back from church, we will make eggs. We make scrambled eggs, and it's funny how, like, if you don't do that, right? Like the afternoon feels off. It's like, well, hold on, it's scrambled egg time. Like, why didn't we make scrambled eggs? Like, what are we doing? Like, we're supposed to make scrambled eggs when we get home. So I really like that staying in sync one. We'll go through it a little bit here, but basically there's four. He outlines four lessons of relationship rituals. They wake up our experience of commitment. They are exclusive to the actual relationship that we're in. Rituals, not routines, bring the magic. So you need the ritual, you need the meaning behind it, not just the routine. The routine there, and then they're not all about the how, right? They're about the why and what are we doing. So the how is less. And I think those are really four good outlines. He talks about these when he's talking about relationships. It's more in like a romantic relationship, if I'm remembering the book correctly. But like I think these apply across all relationships, right? So you think about like they wake up our experience of commitment. Well, okay, if I'm going to do this with my kids or with my really really good friend, it's showing that sign of trust and that sign of we care about each other. When it comes to they're exclusive, there are rituals that you're like, well, I couldn't do that with that other person. Like no, that's our thing. Like we do that. Like we would not want to share that with the rest of the world. They bring the magic, which like gets into this, gets it into more like scientific topics. So if you're thinking about reading this book, there's a little bit of a blend with the scientific topic, although he doesn't go into any real detail on any of the scientific topics. So the one that's in this one is called hedonic adaptation. When we stop noticing the wonderful aspects of what was once fresh and captivating. And he's saying like this is in a relationship where, hey, you first start dating and everything's amazing. And then, by the time you're 6 or 7 years into it, you stop noticing all of those things that you once thought were amazing. He calls that hedonic adaptation. But like, you don't really get anything much more than a definition of it. But then the rituals are all about the how. And I like that idea a lot too, right? Like, I think I might have said that wrong the first time I said it, but the rituals are all about the how. Like, how is where you get the meaning. Like, how do we do these things? It doesn't have to be super extraordinary, but it has to be meaningful. It has to have that deep side of it. The chapter 9 goes into how to survive the holidays. I got to tell you, Mike, like I thought this was strangely specific. I was like, wait, like we're now
Yeah.
like doing like a deep dive into the holidays. And it was like, it just kind of came out of nowhere. And this is where I said at the beginning when I was introducing the book, it almost feels like we did holiday research. So let's just throw that in here, right? Like let's throw our holiday research in here. And then the next one was how to mourn and coping with loss. And again, I think holidays and mourning, these are definitely rituals that involve relationships and they're all around relationships, but like very specific, very like almost strangely specific in terms of what we were talking about here. So that's kind of the overview of part 3. I don't know if I care to really get into much about the holidays or the mourning, unless you're interested in talking about that. But
Well,
that's part 3.
I'll just say that the how to survive the holidays section, yeah, you're right. Like the way it's framed with that title, I don't really like. But there is some good stuff in here, I feel. Like the family meals are really important. That was one of the points. And again, like I know this. Maybe it's a reminder. I don't have an action item with pertaining to this, but one of the things that he mentioned is that when you are eating a meal together, you can't just ask really simple "how was school" type questions.
Yeah.
He called out that one specifically. You have to go off script with conversation. And I tend to do this already. I've shared, I think probably here, about how when I am out to eat with like a big group of people, I'm the one who will just, to someone I've never met before, ask the random deep question.
Yep.
It's kind
Yep.
of a running gag with people who know me. It's like, oh, what deep question is Mike going to ask this time? And just because I like how jarring that is and how you can force people to go to a deeper level with that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of primed for that that sort of thing already. They also mentioned with how to mourn the whole idea of memento mori. Are you familiar with that? I think we talked about that before.
I am.
Yeah, and I know that can make people feel uncomfortable sometimes, but I think that that's an important part of this. There's not necessarily a ritual associated with that, so I don't know. The thing that stood out to me isn't necessarily tied to anything specific in this book, but the whole concept of remembering that you're going to die someday. I can see how that would change rituals and relationships potentially. Although I don't think I've figured out a way to apply that to a group level. Most people who I know in real life, if I were to tell them about memento mori, they'd be like, "Dude, you're weird."
Yeah. I, I would agree. Like I think it comes across as so like, brash and like kind of like, whoa, like really? Like I
Yeah.
mean, but it gets to his point that he makes in the very beginning. It's like everybody dies. And we often think of it as this like crazy topic that nobody wants to talk about. It's like, no, everybody, like, why don't we talk about it? We should talk about it more, and kind of be okay with it. Okay. So now that I've got your opinion on this, I'm going to take a step back and go to the holidays one. He talks about holidays as being like largely logistics management. And I think that's why I don't like rituals for the holidays. Like I think
Mm,
that's why they bother me, is because you get into this mindset, this ritual, this stuck mindset of, well, this is how we do it. Why? Oh, it's how we've always done it. Why? And yes, it's a ritual, and yes, it has meaning, but like oftentimes I find that the answer to the why question is silly and isn't meaningful. Like it's just like, oh, well, that's just because that's how we had to do it and it was logistics. And it's like, no, like let's figure out rituals because they're very meaningful to us. Like because they, oh, well, why do we eat this food? Well, because that was the food grandma brought over on the boat from whatever country. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're talking. Like we're doing it to remember grandma. Like we're doing it because there's a big meaning behind it. And I get so annoyed with we do things ritually. Why? Because not everybody can fit in the living room at so and so's house. So therefore, we have this event at this other place or whatever. And it's just like I don't know. Like maybe I shouldn't be as annoyed by it as I am, but I just get really, really annoyed by it. So it's like when I think about rituals for our family, like my immediate family, it's like I want them to have meaning. I don't want them to just be like rituals for the sake of rituals. I want them to actually have meaning to them around the holiday time, or otherwise we're just spinning our wheels to make things more difficult.
yeah, that's fair.
Soapbox finished. Sorry, I needed to go on my I needed to go on my holiday soapbox. Maybe that's why I didn't like this one.
Well, I think also the whole title of the How to Survive the Holidays kind of sets the stage for a certain perspective, which I don't think necessarily he's saying this is how he feels about his extended family members, but it's alluding to, I think, the general idea of you have to spend time with your extended family members and there's going to be people there you don't like.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that. I mean, on some level, yeah, you're going to have to deal with that kind of stuff. But I think like that's life. That's not just holidays. You probably have coworkers that you wouldn't have chosen either. And you just learn to deal with it and it's fine.
Yep.
And ultimately, you get to decide who are the important people in your life. So if it really bothers you to a certain level, you could just completely disconnect. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like the whole framing is kind of like I can't do anything about this, but I hate it, and that I just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, and it makes me want to basically shuck off all the old rituals of the holiday and make my own and like figure out what they are, or just not have them. but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're always going to have rituals. He did talk about the torchbearer, right? The person who continues the ritual forward. And man, I had like a fun little 5-minute session thinking back through, and it's like, oh yeah, that person continues that tradition. That person continues, like, it's like you knew who the torchbearer was for the
Yeah.
different traditions or rituals.
There was another term called kinkeeper that I liked, which is someone who keeps the family connected.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that either. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned work. So that moves us into part 4. So you naturally transitioned us into part 4, which is rituals at work and in the world. So this is 3 chapters. So how to find meaning at work, how to divide, how to and how to heal, and then the epilogue is in there as well. So I'm going to talk about the one I think is the most ridiculous first, and then we can talk about the serious stuff. So he talks about in the pandemic, people started working from home, but they were used to commuting. So therefore, they would get on their bike and they would ride to the next room.
Well, that was one person specifically, but yeah.
Okay, but and I thought, man, like, what are we doing here? Because if we go out, we get on our bike, we ride for 15 minutes around the neighborhood, come back to our house, and then go to the other room, cool, I'm in, right? Like, that actually makes sense to me. Like, now, what am I doing? I'm replicating or somewhat replicating my mental space of riding to work. Okay, cool, got that. Like, but you're talking like 7 feet, right? And I was like, man, this example, like, we're just too far here. We're too far with this example. Okay, ridiculous, done. What do you got?
Yeah, that example is ridiculous. Not the riding the bike part, obviously. So one of the things that I did during COVID, 2020 specifically, was that as soon as it got nice enough out, I think probably March. So right around the beginning, I decided I was going to get outside and either run or bike every day. And I did that from March until the middle of October. In Wisconsin, that's quite a feat. Like,
Yes.
didn't matter the weather, didn't matter if it was raining. I got outside. And I believe that that helped a lot with my mental state during that time, just getting outside. But I never thought of it as, well, I don't have a commute anymore, so I have to find a way to figure out how to do that. I think that's the issue I have with this. Not that we have to figure out new rituals, but I personally believe that COVID was in some ways a blessing in disguise because it was a break from the normal routine for everyone. So the argument that's sort of being made here is let's do things to nudge us back towards the regular routine. And I think the best things that came out of that were the things that I was like, okay, we can't do what we used to do. How do we achieve that outcome a different way? So like one of the things that we were doing was we were taking kids to the music store downtown.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I got the analog book habit because I was bringing a book with me to piano lessons, which is, there's some good that came from that, but also it meant that either myself or my wife was at the music store for about 3 hours on Monday nights. And we were fortunate that they all got, back to back to back. Otherwise, we're there multiple nights. And when we couldn't do that anymore, it was like, well, we obviously want to keep going with music lessons. I know nothing about piano. What are our options? And we had friends who were missionaries, who Rachel and I had actually gone down to Costa Rica with them the summer before. And they're both very good musicians. And they're missionaries in Costa Rica now. And COVID's happening down there too. And they're trying to figure out how do we make ends meet. So, hey, can we pay you to try Zoom lessons? And they're like, well, we can try it. We've never done it before. It was the right thing at the right time for us. And my kids absolutely thrived in that environment. So we're supporting missionaries that we care about personally. And we don't have to drive down to downtown and spend all Monday night at the music store. Like, this is a win-win.
Yeah, win-win. Yep. Yeah.
And so I like the fact that, we had to figure out where to redraw the boundaries. We kind of did that with sports too, where prior to that, like all our kids were doing all the sports things. And we kind of figured out we're a part of this homeschool co-op, and I coach middle school soccer now because we got involved with this. But it's kind of like a chill way to do sports. Like they practice a couple times a week, but we're a homeschool group. We don't have our own gym that we can have basketball practice in
Yeah.
every day. So we don't practice every day. And you know what? They still get to play and they get better and they're in these tournaments and they have all the camaraderie and the experiences, but it doesn't have to take over their lives. You know, we
Yeah.
have family members who their kids are going to be on the varsity team and they get things at the beginning of summer. This is what you're expected to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, leading up to the season. You know, it's
Yep.
like, okay.
Yeah.
But and that's just, you know, what you do. If there's a conflict, you want to go on vacation as a family, or you got church on Wednesday nights or whatever, it's expected like you're going to adapt to our schedule. And so it just gave us a whole bunch of power, I guess is the right term, but we're playing on our terms now, as opposed to just trying to keep up with the way that the culture went. And I think that's really valuable. I wish more people would have taken advantage of that opportunity, because no one knew what was going on. Like everything got reset. So we got to
Yeah.
figure out how to put all this stuff back together.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting in this book that we get to chapter 11 before we get to what makes a good ritual. Right?
True.
Like I mean, we're in chapter 11 and we finally get Norton's version of what makes a good ritual, and it's synchronicity, right? Do the same action alongside the same people with shared attention, contact and physical movement, and then the work should build a new identity. So the work should build a new identity. So we're doing actions alongside people with shared attention. There's contact and physical movement, and the work should build a new identity. And I was like, why did it take us 10 chapters to get to this is what actually makes a good ritual, from our evidence and from in my mind? And why was it buried in the finding meaning at work section? Like, I just don't understand, because like when I thought about this, I more thought about it in terms of my family. Right.
Yeah.
Like, here's where I actually called out my action items. I said, you know, what are the meaningful rituals my family needs? What are the meaningful rituals my coworkers need? Right. Like, so I'm trying to think about these relationships idea. And this is where like the structure of this book, and I'm going to talk about this in style and rating, but it's like, this is where the structure of this book just kind of gets me. And I feel like I'd have done it differently. I think I'd have done it differently in terms of, how I would have laid it out and would have organized it.
Sure.
I thought it was fun that he calls out the shutdown ritual, which I've heard many people talk about in many different ways. It's like, okay, this is what I do, and I do it at 4:00 every day, or I do it at 4:30 every day, or I do it at 5:00 every day, because it lets my brain turn off, you know, and
Yep.
I can then go home. My shutdown ritual happens in the car on the way home, right? Like, so I will still think about work until I hit the car, and then it's like, nope. When I hit the car, I'm done. Like, I don't want to think about work anymore. And I have like a 15-20 minute period where I can unwind and just debrief before I get home. And then I try not to think about work again after that. So, so that was chapter 11. Chapter 11's at work, and, you know, it's talking about teaming and different, you know, things that they try to get you to do with chants and cheers and, you know, bringing you together as a group. We take a turn in chapter 12 where we go how to divide, you know, when rituals breed tension and trouble. And we've all got these, I think, examples that aren't too hard to think of, is, you know, you do a ritual and it causes, you know, consternation with some other people. I think it's hilarious that he called out the dishwasher, right? Loading the dishwasher, because I don't know if it's because I'm an engineer or whatever it is, but I look at it and I think, we are just not optimizing the way we're putting the dishes in the dishwasher, right? They can be put in a much more efficient way, and we need to be clear about this. So I thought it was hilarious that he called out the dishwasher one. I was laughing while I did that one. Then after the divide, the tension and the trouble one, he rolls right into, okay, how can they heal and how can they bring reconciliation? So how can we use rituals? Whether it's an individual, you know, we've harmed somebody, or we've done something wrong. How can we use a ritual to renew bonds within the family or renew bonds with friends, or when companies come together, right? Like, how can we use rituals to actually bring the two organizations together and make them, you know, kind of mesh well. And like he calls out at the very, very end of chapter 13, that one of the big aspects of of mending and healing this is this joint identity. And this is where I think, there was a huge opportunity to really ride this identity idea, and it wasn't brought up enough and it wasn't connected enough, because it's like that would easily roll back to chapter 12 and say, well, when our rituals divide, a lot of that division, I think, comes from a lack of shared identity, right? Or you're different than me, so therefore we have this conflict. And it's like, well, hold on, are we really that different? An identity, or we're doing a ritual that is intentional to say, I'm different from you, and look at all the ways I'm different from you. And that is causing, this trouble. And we can do the exact same thing with reconciliation, where, hey, we're not that different. Like, look at this ritual that joins us and binds us together, which is a lot of times what I think a lot of, like, not family or not personal rituals are meant to do. Like, these rituals are meant to show us this collective unity, this collective identity, and how we're more alike than we are different. So, we get into the part 4, and I just think that the rituals at work and in the world, it was almost like too big. Like, it was too, like, all encompassing for the sub chapters that were in it. And I kind of got a rough, kind of bad taste in my mouth. I was like, I don't like the way this was organized and the way it was structured. Not that there weren't good things in there that I took, good notes on, and I'm gonna walk away with interesting ideas from.
Yeah, I agree with you. This section was intriguing to me at the beginning. I felt a little bit let down by it, but the whole beginning of the getting everybody pulling in the same direction, how to find meaning at work, that's kind of my jam.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that that stood out to me on this topic, but not necessarily from this book, was an episode of the Good Work podcast by Barrett Brooks, which seems like I bring that up every time.
You have been a lot lately. Yes.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I like Barrett a lot, but he is a really good interviewer, and pretty much every episode I listen to, I end up being fascinated by. I was on my way to the personal retreat, and I was listening to an episode with someone named Benji Backer. I'll put the link to this specific episode in the show notes. And Benji is a person who had founded a nonprofit that was sort of a conservation agency, but also he has a very specific political background, which kind of made it like a bridge organization between conservatives and liberals. So he gets into it in the episode, but he basically grew up very conservative and then starts getting concerned about climate change, which tends to be a very liberal issue currently, but wasn't always. And now essentially what he does is he's in DC and he arranges these dinners and he invites Republican and Democrat senators, Congress people to a dinner, and they get there and they're kind of like, well, what are we going to do? Like, this, I'm sitting by these people that I don't like. This is really uncomfortable. And he just gets them to start talking, and they realize that they actually have a lot of overlapping interests, and it's not as cut and dry, us against them, as it tends to be. He calls out kind of the specifics of how they don't live in the same places anymore, so they've kind of dehumanized the other side. It used to be that they went to the same churches, their kids went to the same schools, they saw each other outside of the battleground of the Senate floor, but
Yeah.
over years, like, they've lost that. And essentially when it comes to something like climate change, which is his big thing, he's trying to get people to understand, like, we are on the same side here, and this really shouldn't be this partisan issue that it is. And that's the thing that's interesting to me, is how do we apply that across a lot of different ideas and concepts? How do you build bridges, essentially? But what's also interesting about this particular episode that caught my attention was that he mentioned some specifics about a story growing up, and he's from Appleton, so same town as me.
Yeah.
But that has nothing to do necessarily with the takeaways from the episode. And I've been in the position of trying to organize some of the like company team building stuff, and I've realized some of the difficulties that come with that. He mentions this whole idea of collective effervescence, where even a series of random actions performed together can turn a gathering of strangers into a meaningful unit. I really like that whole idea. I really like helping teams and organizations dial in their vision and their core values. And then just like you could have people who are already working in an organization, and the minute that they get clear on that sort of stuff, there's alignment and they're pulling in the same direction. And you now have found meaning at work. You didn't have to manufacture it, it was already there, and you just got clarity. So I definitely think rituals can help move in that direction, just in terms of like business ops and things like that. One of the things I was doing at the agency prior to leaving was revamping all of our meetings and having a positive focus at the beginning and ending of every meeting. I think I talked about that previously, where we would express gratitude at the end of the meeting. So you're fighting with people in the middle of the meeting. Like, I don't think we should do this. Well, I think we should do this. Trying to find, what is the right thing to do? Not consensus, but can I get to the point where I disagree but commit, let you make this call, and then at the end, you're expressing gratitude to someone, and it kind of just wipes away all of the negative stuff that happened in the meeting. And obviously, like you have to do it right. You can't get personal. You can't call people names, things like that. You got to talk about the work, not the people.
Yeah.
But when you get everybody on the same page, like we're all trying to make this place better because this is our vision. This is what we're trying to accomplish here. These are the things that we're going to use as decision-making criteria. It can be really powerful. And then you have all of these little things that you do as part of the day-to-day, the regular routines that kind of reinforce that. You can't just tack them on, though. That's the thing. Well, Slack does this. Not Slack, the company, because they actually had a pretty great company culture when they started their product. I don't know if it's still that way, but, insert your favorite company and you can look at, well, this is the things that they do and why they do them and what they've been able to get as a result. Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to totally steal that. But you have to connect it and make it your own.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
exactly.
It's just, why are we doing this? People don't really connect to that. But I think it's really powerful. And I think if you can get people pulling in the same direction, you can create alignment.
Oh, yeah.
That's really when you can make a big difference in the world. Whether that is a company, an organization, a nonprofit, doesn't matter. Like that's what leadership is. And that's the thing that's exciting to me, is helping people make a bigger dent in the universe. However, this section, I don't know. It's like, well, there's certain things that you could do, like trust falls, which actually do make an effect. And then the whole how to divide, like this is the reason that no one gets along. And, how to heal essentially is if you have to say, I'm sorry you were hurt by my actions, that's not a real apology. If I was going to summarize it, that's really what it is.
Yes. Yeah. Just so you know, like, so it's chapter 13, then we go to epilogue, and the epilogue's like 3 pages, and it's done. And basically, if I can summarize the epilogue, it's basically we're all constantly creating and enacting rituals. That's what we're doing. We're doing these all the time. They're daily. And we go back to the tagline of the book, basically how do we harness the surprising power of everyday actions, that are these rituals. Yeah, I guess we should go to action items real quick, because I want to get into style and rating. Like I'm ready to talk about style and rating. So I'll do my action items first. So my action items break down into what rituals do I want to implement, and what are important. And I'm going to kind of subcategorize these because it's one action item, but it's in a couple different categories. So personal, and then family, and then work, right? Like, so what are my personal rituals that I want to implement? What are my family rituals I want to implement? And what are the work rituals I want to implement? And my goal, Mike, so you can hold me accountable for next episode, I really just want one. Like, I don't want to have to, like, I don't want the expectation to be I have 7 of these for each one. It's more like, what's one solid ritual that I'm either doing that I want to keep doing, or that I want to start. And I want to think through those. So that's my major action item for this one.
All right.
How about yours?
Well, I've got a couple, and one unofficial one, I'll say, because I think what you're hitting on is really what the book is intending for you to do, is to consider all of your different rituals. And I think that I'm going to continue to think about that and what are the elements of my day to day that I could add more meaning through ritual. But that feels like a lot. And I don't want to break it down into, I want to figure out something for personal, family, and work. So I'm
Okay.
going to leave that one off the table for now. But I still have 3 specific action items. So the first one, how can I make the ritual of date night specifically more meaningful? So I guess, that's the one I want to really start with. You mentioned the ridiculous getting on my bike and riding it from one room to the next, but that really did
Yes.
get me thinking about my transition to work ritual. I don't really have one. I work at home. So I wake
Okay.
up, I have my morning routine, and then it's like, okay, better get to work. I think having a couple of things that I do on my way to work would be very helpful. Maybe that means that I just don't work from home anymore. Like I'll record podcasts here,
Whoa.
but I have a co-working space I can go to. Maybe that's how I start my day. I get in the car, I have the commute, I go there, I do my writing in the morning, and then I come back in the afternoon. I don't know exactly, but I want to think about that. And then I also want to add a shutdown routine to my day. You mentioned shutdown routines. I understand conceptually the value of the shutdown routine, but just like my transition to work routine, this one is almost non-existent.
Okay.
So these are kind of like bookends for me. But if I could walk away from this book having a transition to work ritual and a shutdown ritual that actually sticks, then this would make this one of the most transformative books I have ever read.
And you completely redeem yourself.
That's a lot of pressure. I don't know that that's actually going to happen, but
Oh man. So
there's
I mean,
potential here.
what I'm seeing here, Mike, is coffee is the answer to both of these, right? Like before you go to work, you just brew yourself one of your frou-frou coffees. That's your ritual. Then you walk that thing downstairs and you start your workday. And then right before you end your workday, you brew yourself another frou-frou coffee, right? Drink that as you shut down your routine, and then walk upstairs and join the rest of the family. Oh man,
Possible.
that's hilarious. All right. So now that we've got action items, let's work on, or let's go into style and rating. It's my book, so I'll start. Mike, you might have heard it in my voice from the very beginning of the recording and starting the show. I wasn't that big of a fan of this book. It wasn't that it didn't have some nuggets of things I'll take from it, or there weren't some good things in it, but I just wasn't a fan of kind of the nature of it. It felt kind of like humdrum, kind of lukewarm. Here's this study that we did and here's what we got out of it, and the thread of rituals, while there, wasn't wound in as tightly as I wanted it to be. I thought there was a huge opportunity missed to tie it more to identity and kind of make that connection there, and I thought that was a meaningful piece that was missed. So I don't know. My rating on this one's not going to be very good. I'm not going to go crazy on it. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Because I just thought it was okay, and we'll see what I get out of it. I don't like recommending books that I then rate at a 3 out of 5, but here we are. The Ritual Effect, 3 out of 5 for me. What's yours? What did you think of it?
Oh man, I'm struggling with this one. There's definitely parts of it that I didn't really care for. Kind of ended it with a thud instead of a bang, in my opinion, with the work stuff.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I'm caught up on something that you just said, where you said I have trouble recommending a book that is a 3, and I think I agree. That makes it hard to say people should read this one. Do I think people should read this one? I actually do. I think,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't have a whole lot of context with books that talk specifically about rituals as it pertains to habits. Argument could be made. You mentioned those are really the same things, but I think there's a really powerful argument at the beginning that they're not. And that sets the stage for, well, what is a ritual then? And what does it look like? And how can I get more out of it? I think you take out the last section and um the one that we skipped over. What the epilogue, a
Oh
ritual
yeah.
life, which is basically just restating all of
Yeah.
the famous rituals that he mentioned at the beginning, and then encouraging us to focus on the simple things. I think that's kind of what I'm landing on is, for better or for worse. I don't know if this is due to good writing that didn't land with you, or maybe I just teased it out because I Mortimer Adlered this sucker. But I feel like I'm able to understand what Michael Norton is getting at with rituals and how valuable they can be. It's inspired me in a lot of ways to consider my own rituals. And I just have a feeling that I'm going to come back to the action items from this book, and it's going to be fairly significant. For whatever reason, I've talked about shutdown rituals previously, and it's never really stuck for me. And I feel more incentivized than I ever have before to make that work. Now, it's possible that I forget about this the minute that we stop recording and nothing actually happens. And at that point, I may have some egg on my face, but I'm going to rate it 4 stars for that
Okay.
reason. Um, I don't think you need to read the whole thing. I don't think the rituals that work in the world section like really adds much at all.
Yeah,
uh,
I agree.
but I really like the what rituals do, the rituals for ourselves, rituals and relationships. There's a solid 3-part productivity book right there. And are there some flaws and could things be phrased a little bit differently? Yeah, just in terms of the tone, I didn't really like the fact that he's a Harvard professor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he kind of mentions multiple times, well, working with these really smart people is really smart places, and we are doing really smart things. And it's kind of like, okay, I get it. You're really smart. That
Yep.
I've thought that was a little bit unnecessary. I feel like it's sort of compensating maybe for some of the storytelling that we've been getting a good dose of in the last several books that we read. Maybe there's a different version of this where you don't lean on the credentials and like the research that you're doing so much, and you're telling better stories around the power of ritual. But some of the stories that are in here are decent. It's just not, we've had some really good storytellers, and not to that level. So I think you do kind of got to know what you're getting into with this one. But I do like the premise of the book a lot, which is applying these rituals to your day to day. I don't know. Maybe that's, you were talking about the legacy rituals, and that's kind of maybe the thing that you were after when you picked it. So I could totally see, if I had picked this book and I thought this is what I was getting, I got something totally different, that would leave a bad taste in my mouth, just to be honest. But
Yeah.
like I mentioned at the very beginning, I was sort of surprised, and I kind of liked the direction that he went with this, even though it wasn't exactly what I expected. So
Yeah.
I think if you are wanting something that goes beyond just like the rote mechanics of habits, then this is a good one.
Okay. I mean, I can't tell you I agree. Like I don't think I would recommend that people read this one. Not that it was terrible. It was just a matter of, I don't know. I just don't think it was that great of a book. I will tell you that I have not come across, or maybe I haven't looked hard enough, but it's like I have not come across many other books that talk about rituals. So maybe
Exactly.
this is, yeah. So that point is valid. Like you definitely make a very clear and good point in terms of that. Maybe my expectations were just too high walking into this.
Yeah. So like
So
if you are wanting a habit book, don't pick up this one, because while
yes,
it sort of talks about habits, there's much better books that are going to speak to that specific topic. But if you want
Ma-
something that is, how do you create magical moments in your day to day through ritual, that's a very tiny niche, and I don't think I have a better resource for you. If I find
yeah.
one, that would probably bring my score down on this book, honestly. But having read hundreds of books at this point, kind of surprised I haven't come across that yet. Like, how do you actually create a solid ritual? I don't know. Maybe someone needs to write that book.
Yeah, and maybe I wanted it to be more of, hey, I want to make better rituals. Tell me how to make better rituals, and that wasn't the nature of this book. Like maybe that's probably where my little bit of letdown is. So
Sure.
okay. Okay. All right. Let's move into upcoming books. You've got the next book. So what are we reading next, Mike?
Next, we are reading A System for Writing by Bob Dotto. Actually, you are reading System for Writing because
So
I read it already.
you've already read it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but I was surprised when you mentioned that you were interested in that topic, and I think it would be a really cool conversation. I did talk to Bob Dotto when we had him on the Focus podcast, but that was more just about. We did get into some of the content of the book, but it wasn't through a critical lens like we tend to do on Bookworm. It was more just a conversation with Bob, who is a very interesting guy. So I guess you already know that I like this book. No pressure or anything.
Yeah, I know. No pressure. Although it won't really mess with my opinion that much. If I don't like it, I'm going to tell you.
That's true. Yeah, you didn't like Radical Candor either.
Yeah.
What's after that?
So I think after that, and I can't remember if you've covered this one or not, because I was gonna do ultra learning, and then I remembered to look it up real quick before we started the show, and I was like, oh no, they've done ultra learning. Oh no. Have you done 101 essays that will change the way you think by Brianna Weist?
No, we did a Brianna Weist book, but I don't remember which one it was. It was not that one.
So it's just a bunch. It's a collection of her beloved pieces of writing, meditations on why you should pursue purpose over passion, embrace negative thinking. It's a bunch of different things. I think we'll have a very interesting conversation, whether we love it or hate it. I think we'll have a very interesting conversation from this book. Here's the issue though that I want to ask you about. We should have had this conversation before we started this show. So sorry, I forgot. It's 448 pages. Is that too long for us?
I think it's fine as long as you're able to get it done.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I actually, that sounds really fascinating. So I'm actually looking forward to this one.
Okay. So yep, we're gonna commit to that one. We're gonna do 101, and Dotto's book is a little shorter, so we can get a head start on it. So okay, good.
Exactly.
All right, so 101 essays that will change the way you think by Brianna Weist. I think it's Weist.
That is the one caveat with this. If you're going to pick it, you got to figure out how to say the name correctly.
Yeah, you had to do that for Hidden Genius, so I have to do that for this one. Okay. All right, Mike, do you have any gap books between now and next time?
Well, I did, but maybe we'll put this on pause after I see how long this 101 essays is. Now, I mentioned before The Elements of Eloquence by Mark Forsyth, and I haven't had a chance to read that one yet, but I really do want to. So my plan was to read that one when I was traveling to Boise shortly. My wife and I are going to use the ConvertKit studios and record some life theme videos.
Nice.
But I'm going to focus on 101 essays first. So yeah, we'll see.
Wonderful. I do not have a gap book because 101 essays is as long as it is, and I also have to read, System for Writing as well. So I'm not gonna do a gap book on this one. We're also starting the academic semester, so a lot of my reading time is gonna get pulled into start of the semester meetings and meetings with students and stuff. So I'm gonna intentionally not choose a gap book on this one. So with that is the end of another bookworm. We want to remind everybody and thank everybody who listens to the pro show for doing that. That helps us kind of keep the lights on and keep things moving, pay for hosting and a bunch of different things. So thank you for doing that. If you're interested in the pro show, you can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm. With the pro show, you get the unedited raw feed that comes straight down. You get it really quick after we record the show. You get the show with no ads whenever we do have ads that are sold on the show. And that comes out basically the same time as the ad supported show. and then there's a wallpaper there, and I think that's it. But you can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm. If you The Apple just released, they just kind of did a new thing. So if you're using the Patreon app, I would recommend that you go
Oh
to
yeah,
the website. You go to the website, or else you're going to pay 30% more for the
that's true.
membership, and that has nothing to do with us. We have nothing to do with that. So I would just go online, go to the internet, and go to patreon.com/bookwormfm if you're interested in that. But thanks for everybody who does that. That really does help out the show, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, it's $7 a month, and you forgot the main benefit, which is the extended section.
Oh
So
yes,
today there
yes,
was a surprise technology topic that you dropped on me.
yes. Yep. So today we talked about whether or not Mike likes foldy technology, and we'll leave that there for that. But it was a good conversation. So, Mike, do you have anything else before we close out another one?
Nah, if you are reading along with us, pick up A System for Writing by Bob Dotto, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.